We had 3 parallel sessions this morning. Hardworking people and great rapporteurs, I think, that will join me now on the stage. 3 parallel sessions this morning were the first one, reconciling conflicting interests in a shared maritime space. The second one was focused on seeking enhanced cooperation in the transport and energy sectors. And the third one, the group of people discussed about smart approach for a sustainable and attractive region. The region is, of course, the region for which we are all here, and it is the Adriatic and Ionian region. Within the European Union and with those who are still outside the European Union but wants to become a member. So for the closing session on the first forum of the EU strategy for the Adriatic and Ionian region, I would like to call on the stage to join me here. I hope they are here. If not, we will wait, yeah. The rapporteurs, first the rapporteur for our parallel session 1, that was reconciling conflicting interests in shared maritime space, Mr. Christos Economou. Head of Unit, European Commission, DG for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, welcome. The rapporteur from our parallel session 2, which is seeking enhanced cooperation in the transport and energy sectors, is Fabrizio Barbasso, expert and former Deputy Director General at the European Commission. He is arriving, okay, we'll wait for him. The rapporteur from our parallel session number 3, which was, as I said, smart approach for a sustainable and attractive region, is Andrea Mariate. I'm sorry, Mairat, oh my God, small letters. Head of Unit, European Commission, DG for Regional and Urban Policy. Welcome. And we have a rapporteur from what one of the ministers yesterday enhanced and the panelists on our first plenary, that without business we are nothing. We'll see about that. Our rapporteur from B2B session, Ms. Vesna Torbarina, Senior Advisor at the Croatian Chamber of Economy. As we discussed, each of them has, well, we'll see, 3 to 5 minutes maybe, because we started earlier, to give us the key points and key conclusions from their sessions. So, Mr. Economou, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So I would try to give you the main conclusions of the parallel session 1, which looked into how we reconcile conflicting interests in a shared maritime space. So first of all, the session looked into the legal aspects in the sense that there is indeed a comprehensive legal and policy framework in which such interests can be handled. This framework includes international and EU legislation. I think these were from the start mentioned already in the plenary session, including the Maritime Spatial Planning Directive and the framework of the Barcelona Convention. So in a shared maritime space in the Adriatic and Ionian Sea, such a framework needs to be taken into account. And the countries, they do work in that sense. There are also several databases and tools developed through transnational projects which offer the ways to manage these conflicting interests, but there are still gaps in the way we handle these databases, so more integration it would be certainly welcomed among these databases and information available. Second, in order to reconcile conflicting interests in the Adriatic and Ionian Sea Basin and their costs, the ecosystem approach adopted by the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention is a key element. So that came up very clearly. Several options identified through transnational projects and practices at national level or other micro-regional strategies that exist should be used and replicated. So that's also a message that came out from the plenary session. Then regarding more specifically EUSAIR strategic project ideas addressing the topic of the parallel session, focused on at least 3 things I will mention. First, the integration of maritime spatial planning and integrated coastal zone management in anthropogenic activities. which also aim of translating sectoral approaches. Second, on capitalization of existing evidence-based knowledge. And third, on sustainable aquaculture. These projects, where relevant, shall be developed within the current legal institutional framework I mentioned from the start, and shall build on current project practices and engage also the private sector. So these are the conclusions of the session, and I hope I did justice to all the panelists and participants there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I would like to ask Mr. Barbasso to present us the conclusions and report from the parallel session 2 seeking enhanced cooperation in transport and energy sectors, please.
Thank you very much. Transport and energy are rather different from the other sectors because of the long-term and high cost investments which are needed. However, the panel stressed from the outset the paramount importance of these two sectors and in particular their interconnection in order to promote a sustainable, smart, inclusive growth in the Adriatic-Ionian region. Connectivity, which has to be supported, as it was recalled yesterday, by innovation capacity, delivers benefits for citizens and businesses, attracts investments, creates jobs. Political endorsement has been reiterated at the highest level many times in various fora. The challenge ahead is to turn the political statements into concrete achievements without any delay. Non-EU participants in the EU strategic Adriatic-Ionian region are small, fragmented, often isolated markets which must be integrated in the larger European market throughout the interconnection of their energy and transport infrastructures. The integration process will be an opportunity also for upgrading the existing networks, for making them more competitive. This means lower cost and later lower prices for consumers, and more able to face the challenges of open economies. It is a process which requires converging efforts by all stakeholders who are invited to work together across the borders with a cooperative multi-level governance approach. Common legal, regulatory, contractual, commercial, environmental, financing rules duly applied and enforced will facilitate the implementation of the politically agreed projects having a macro-economic, macro-regional dimension. Some gaps must be tackled at the borders. More efforts for prioritization, taking into account the short and the long term, as well as cross-cutting issues such as training, entrepreneurship, governance, intermodality efficiency are also needed. And the third conclusion is that in view of overcoming the still existing barriers and bottlenecks, in addition to the cooperation at all levels, an increased coordination of analysis, policies, initiatives, works, monitoring, evaluation activities is required. Connecting platforms might be set up for this purpose. All conditions needed for launching new projects must be fulfilled, with a special focus on converging priorities, effectiveness, complementarity, and network resilience. There are positive examples of smart cooperation which brings results both in the energy sector, and the example was given of the action plan for the interconnection of the gas pipelines in Central and Southeastern Europe, so-called CISEC, and also in the transport sector. One example is the Association of Ports of North Adriatic. These successful initiatives should lead the way to further joint efforts by the public authorities and the private sector, aiming at interconnecting the Adriatic-Ionian region for the benefit of all its people.
Thank you so much. As you said at the beginning, very complex issue and the long-term run to do, but some optimism is always good, basically, at the end. The third report from our parallel session 3 is on smart approach for a sustainable and attractive region. Mr. Andrea Mairate, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll try to summarize the main conclusions or main messages arising from the discussion of the two panels which were dealing with sustainable tourism. I think there were two panels, one on the funding opportunities and how we can make the best use of these funding opportunities, and then the second panel more on stakeholders and the role of the business sector in particular, and what good practices could be transferred to the Adriatic-Ionian region. I think the first key idea is that we should look at tourism in a more integrated way. I think we are not talking about a sector, we are talking about a sector which is economically important in terms of share of the European GDP. It's almost 10% if we include the indirect effects, and in terms of jobs, it's 10% of the jobs in the EU. And in this area, it's also extremely relevant. I mean, if you look at Croatia, 60% of the GDP comes from the tourism sector, directly or indirectly. But when we are talking about the approach to tourism, we have to think in terms of, other factors which are extremely important, like, for example, skills, which is a key factor if we want to make tourism a driver for growth. We are talking about SME support, we are talking about digitalization, so there are a range of different factors which are extremely important for tourism. I think there are three key messages or three key areas, perhaps also for further work in the strategy, and I would like to summarize them. I hope I will not oversimplify what has been said in the two panels. I think the first conclusion is how to promote the most strategic use of the funding which is available in different EU programs through different EU instruments. If we want to make more strategic use, you have to think in terms of synergies, complementarities between the funds which are provided by the European Structural Investment Funds and other funds which are managed by the Commission. COSME was mentioned, where there is a budget which is earmarked for tourism. But I think if you want to use this in a more strategic way, you have to think strategically. And one of the tools which I think was mentioned, and I think in the whole event, is smart specialization strategies. I think this is very important because it's not thinking about sectors, it's thinking about value chains, it's thinking about linkages, synergies, and priorities for collaboration between the different actors. I mean, the research knowledge centers, universities can play a role, the business sector, the government, and so forth, and of course the financial sector. So this is, I think, a very important key message, and I mean, thinking about innovative processes and value chains. The second key message is about content. I mean, how can we promote sustainable tourism in a transnational context, thinking about things that we can do together, because tourism is a very competitive sector. So, I mean, countries can cope alone with their own cultural and natural assets, and they can build on that. But there are things that can be done at a transnational level. And I think a few examples came through. For example, the cultural roots. This is because there is a common cultural heritage. So the idea of building cultural roots, I think in Italy, I think we have examples in Greece and other parts of Europe, so we can build on this as well. I think the example of nautical tourism, which is very relevant for the area. I mean, the marinas, I mean, this is a sector which is, well, which has probably been hit by the crisis, but it has perspectives of development which can be exploited. I mean, there are a number of areas which can be fully exploited if we have the right synergies and the right cooperation framework to do so. The third key conclusion, which in my view is very important, is how to deepen governance, to have the right governance framework to involve not just the institutions, the public administrations, but to have the business sector, to have non-profit organizations, to build partnerships with the regional and the local authorities. I think one of the examples which was mentioned, I mean, the cultural roots is not just about the public institutions, I mean, promoting these kind of initiatives, but it's about building partnerships with private institutions, with non-profit organizations, and so forth. I mean, linked to this, the issue of the improving information and better communication among stakeholders. I think the issue of data is very important. I think how can we improve, develop relevant data for tourism? How can we foster exchange of knowledge and good practice in the area? I think this is very important and should be explored further. But I think my final message, I think I mentioned it, but I would like to mention it again, it's investing on skills. If we want to manage innovation in the tourism sector, we have to invest in skills and training. I think this is, I would say, the precondition and the key factor if we want to make tourism a key driver for growth.
Thank you so much for your thorough explanation, Mr. Mariate. Now I'm calling Ms. Vesna Turbarina to report us from B2B session about money people, they say here.
Thank you. I will shortly explain what happened yesterday morning before the forum. So Croatian Chamber of Economy, as a member of Enterprise Europe Network, was in charge with B2B session. Thanks to the European Commission, Enterprise Europe Network had a chance to organize this B2B event with the help of other EN partners from Adriatic Ionian region. And we gathered around 130 participants, mostly SMEs, but there were also some institutions. So let me tell you briefly who we are and what was the purpose of B2B. Enterprise Europe Network is the largest network for competitiveness and entrepreneurship in the world. We support SMEs with international ambitions. So the network consists of 600 organizations like chambers of economies and universities, technology centers, development agencies, and so on, in more than 60 countries. Through our wide range of services, we can help companies to make the most of business opportunities in the EU and beyond. Among other services, one is to arrange meetings with potential partners at brokerage events, and that's what we tried to do yesterday morning from 9 to 12:30. And the purpose of this B2B event was to facilitate meetings between SMEs within Adriatic Ionian region to identify and develop common actions and projects or to explore new business opportunities. Each company booked in advance several meetings, And in total, there were around 80 meetings yesterday morning. Particular focus was on Pillar 1 and 4 of the EU strategy for Adriatic Union region. So the participants also had a great opportunity to meet representatives from the European Commission, the region, European Investment Bank, business angels, joint research centers, and discuss with them about their ideas. The participants are very satisfied, so I can conclude that the B2B session was very successful. That's all.
Wow. Mr. Economou, thank you very much. Mr. Barbaso, thank you very much. Mr. Mairati, thank you very much. Mr. Balina, thank you very much for your reports. And I hope that all these people involved in this strategy will keep following your remarks in the future. And as we are waiting for our closing remarks and the so-called, we need to give our, presidency from Croatia to Greece. So we have one assistant minister and one deputy minister. Assistant minister is from Croatia, deputy minister is from Greece, and Mr. Walter Defa, who will close it at the end, Director General for Regional and Urban Policy. But for the beginning, I'm calling to give us a closing remark, Mr. Dragan Jelic, Assistant Minister for Ministry of Regional Development and EU Funds. He used to chair, I think, in Slavonski Brod Center for Technological Development, and Slavonski Brod is a town on the banks of River Sava, on the border with Bosnia, very polluted. He's in startups and things, and now he's assistant minister, so we'll see what his final message will be. He was supposed to know things.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I have a pleasure to close this very successful, I think, first forum on the EUSAIR, and thanks to Commission and thanks to all of you, we have to conclude this successful first forum. For me, a few highlights to take home. On these sessions, we all agreed on the social and economic challenges, energy, tourism, infrastructure. And we must not forget the migration flows and their management. This is very big issues to us also, and here in Slavonski Brod, because we were also on migration route in past few months or in past year. We had a session of conflicting maritime interests, but I found and you found that we had less disagreements and more common interests. So I thought that in the future it will not be conflicting maritime interests, or it will be common maritime interests. In our session on multi-level governance, we discovered the obvious, of course. We are better off together. Our open region is bound together by geography and history, and we face the same challenges, all of us here. Whatever we do at our regional level must reinforce EU integration, of course, and help partners to advance on their path towards more integration. We will manage the complexity of our times only in transparent fashion, where citizens realize that concrete benefits of our shared space, shared policy making, and our shared funding. We are not doing this for us, we are doing this for all citizens of this region, of course. Of course, a big thank you to all of you. Thank you for your active participation on the ministerial meeting and the forum. High-level presence from all participants signals that our Adriatic Ionian region does matter to all of us. Of course, big thanks to Commission. Without their active support, we would not be able to progress. And of course, a big thank you to my Croatian team. You flawlessly prepared a great meeting without any mistakes, and I think that we are all happy here for these 2 or 3 days. From now on, we have a solid base for our future work, the Dubrovnik Declaration, and the job for Croatia as the chair was to launch the implementation of the approved EU strategy. It will be the task of the next chair, Greece, to continue on that road. I wish Greece as next chair the very best of luck, and you have our full support. Thank you all.
Please don't leave. Mr. Jelic, please, 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 just stay on the stage. I would like to ask Mr. Alexandros Karistis to join us, but don't leave, don't leave. We have media here, we need your handshake, because we are transferring the chairmanship. We need a handshake from Greece and Croatia on the stage, and then Mr. Karistis can make his closing remarks, just to have a photo talking about photos and videos, they will be available on the forum website. So this is Greece-Croatia, transfer of knowledge and experience. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jelic, Mr. Karatsitsis. The floor is yours, please. Thanks.
Colleagues and friends, thank you very much. Actually, I had a formal speech prepared, but I decided that I will just say a few words from heart. It's been a very interesting 2 days here in Dubrovnik, and of course I would like to thank our colleagues from Croatia for the tremendous work they've done, and they've set the standards very high for us, and we hope we can cope with them within the next year during our presidency. The work is already underway in order to establish a strategy that can be, and we hope that it will be, very beneficial to all the participant countries. But let me say a few words on why we think that this strategy can prove useful to all of us. I was thinking yesterday that, listening to my colleagues during the forum, that I come from Greece. I'm here in Croatia discussing issues on growth and development with my colleagues from several other countries of the region. And then I realized we have this device here, this brilliant piece of technology, which is design and quality from Denmark, and was manufactured in China. So I think we all realize that whether we like it or not, we live in a globalized economy. So unless we all join forces and we try to find and create synergies between our countries and our economies, it will be very hard for us to survive in the international competition. In that respect, I think this strategy can play a very important role, and can play a very important role because our synergies are not just business-wise, or does not have to do only with trade and with economical factors. As Minister Kovac said yesterday, and I think this is something we all should keep in mind, we all represent the countries of ancient Europe. We all share many similar and sometimes common historical and cultural background. And this is something that I've realized very well during these last couple of days. Actually, I was informed yesterday that the first settlement here in Dubrovnik in the 7th century AC was created by Greeks. And that's something that really amazed me. And some of the names of the islands in the area are of Greek origin, which is, again, something very amazing. I don't want to spend too much of your time. I'll try to keep it brief, but I think the message should be that we have so much in common, so much things to share. All this shared heritage should be transferred into our common effort for growth of the growth of our region. We will do our best during our presidency. You know, our country, Greece, has been through very turbulent times the last few years, but with the effort that has been done in the last few months and the recent developments in Brussels, we all hope that the hard times are in the past, and we are much more optimistic about the future. So I think it's a very good timing for us to take over the presidency of this strategy. So if I just had to put it in just 4 words, I would say, think macro-regionally, act locally. That's the motto for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and the honor to close the first forum of the EU strategy for the Adriatic Ionian region, Mr. Walter Defa, our Director for Regional and Urban Policy in DG. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you today, because the last 2 days were very intense and I'm the last to speak, and you are already sitting on your suitcases or you are hungry. My conclusions also will be rather brief. My main conclusion actually is these last 2 days were a very successful premiere for the implementation of the Adriatic Ionian strategy. Premiere for implementation. I think this is very important. So premiere because it was the first forum. It was the first time that we had this joint ministerial with the foreign ministers and with the fund ministers. And I think it was the first time that we had such a big crowd coming here. 700 participants when you take all the different meetings together. Participants from the national authorities, from the regional authorities, from the local authorities. But I would say at least as important, if not more important, the others. In particular, we had a representation, a very substantial representation from the business sector. So, and we just heard how successful these meetings were, B2B also. We had participants from academia and also from different strands of the civil society as a whole. From my point of view, to have these stakeholders on board is a very important success factor for the whole strategy. So all this shows that the expectations for the strategies are very, very high. My wish is that these 2 days, that they go into the history books of the EUSAIR, that these 2 days were the moment when we passed from words to action. And as we've heard in the morning, I think this was also a feeling that was in many sessions very, very present. And we all know action speaks louder than words. So for me, the key words as takeaways from these 2 days are implementation, implementation, and implementation. So what we need now are concrete initiatives and also concrete projects. The foundations for that are very good. I think we have now solid foundations. We have the 4 pillars, and the discussions that we had over the 2 days, I think, made things clearer. Where do we want to go? What are the challenges? What are the actions we have to put in place also in terms of priorities? What we also learned is that it is important to have the links to the other initiatives on our eyes, in particular also the Berlin process. So the 4 pillars, they give us the perspective, but it has also become clear the strategy has to be adaptable, has to react to new developments if it wants to be relevant. And the refugee crisis was rightly present in so many discussions. I think what is important that out of the refugee crisis, we take also something positive. And the positive thing I think that we can take out of it is to make it a showcase of regional cooperation. Because it's only when we demonstrate that all those in the regions work together and are helped also by others, that when you work together, when you grow together, when you show solidarity with each other, it's only then that we will together achieve the stability and the prosperity of the whole region. What is also very important in my view is, and I think it's only then that we will make real progress, that everybody at her place or his place, wherever, that they feel as being part of the strategy. So that they make a contribution and that this contribution counts. This is the famous ownership. We should not underestimate this. This is not easy because it's changing the way you work, it's changing the way you think, it means changing attitudes. We heard yesterday and this morning, out of the comfort zone, thinking across and acting across borders. All this is new, uncomfortable, but the rewards will be high. Because the EUSAIR will not succeed if it's only a sequence of individual political events. It has to become a kind of a daily mindset, continuous action. It's good that we have the new EUSAIR facility point that will help, and you can also count on the Commission. We also will continue to support, but all this cannot substitute for real commitment and involvement at all levels of administrations, but also of the stakeholders. Actions, of course, also need resources. I think there the situation is slightly better because now we have the transnational Adrian program. It's also very clear that in the national ESIF and IPA programs, there has to be this transnational, macro-regional dimension. We have heard of other EU programs, and there are also the financial institutions like the EIB and the EBRD that can help. Now the task is to transform these resources into concrete results for the benefits of the whole region. And I'm confident that next time the forum will meet, that you will be able to take stock of substantial progress. So, to really conclude, I would very much like to thank again the Croatian authorities, the Croatian colleagues and friends for their great hospitality, and also, more generally, for the great cooperation with them during this period of their chairmanship. Also, a thank you to all those who have contributed to the organization of this event. I think they all merit a hand of applause. Okay, now, as we have heard, as we have seen, the baton is passed, of the chairmanship is passed to Greece. And I was very encouraged by what the Deputy Minister said. You see the great enthusiasm and the strong commitment. So, good luck, Greece. Kali Tishi. And thank you, all of you. Thanks for your attention, thanks for your participation, and thanks for your commitment in the past and in particular for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Defa, for these encouraging and energetic words. Before I give some technical elements to the continuation of the day, please leave the headphones on the chairs. Photos and videos will be available on the forum website in the next couple of days and you can watch these interesting panel discussions again and think about what you've said and what you've heard. From 1:45 we have a networking lunch outside, and from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., not to forget the side event, the EUSAIR and the Blue Med initiative, complementarity and mutual benefits, so it's here. So all of you who are keen to stay into this room, please come from 3 to 5 and be here. And just to, I started with Mare Nostrum, I will finish with Mare Nostrum and something Professor Bianchi said yesterday about importance of social dialogue and the thing that Mediterranean was, and I think will be the key to the solution of Europe's problems, but Mediterranean as a wider circle and Adriatic and Ionian Seas as a smaller part of the Mediterranean. To connect what Mr. Karitsis said about some Greek origins of places in Dubrovnik. In 385, I think, before Christ, the group of fishermen from Paros Island in Greece came and established the oldest settlement in the Adriatic. It's the town Stari Grad, which means old town, in the island of Hvar, which is Pharos in Latin version of this Mediterranean conglomerate we all live in. So basically, in 1900, the group of fishermen from Stari Grad, it was the beginning of 20th century, went to one island which you all know in Italy, the name is Lampedusa, and they learned the local people how to fish. So as I started with this finger in the sea and we're all connected, if we are connected, then we should work together and do something constructive, finally. Thank you very much for being here, and thanks to my friends for doing such a great work from the Commission and the Minister. Thanks.